Everybody in the town of Adiola loved Mama Rosa. They loved her big, warm smile. They loved how she always smelled like talcum powder and fresh bread. They loved how she hugged you like she meant it. Mama Rosa owned the House of Hope Orphanage, a beautiful building painted white and yellow, sitting on a quiet street with flowers in the garden and a big sign outside that said, "Every child deserves a home filled with love." People would drive past and say, "God bless that woman." Neighbours would say, "She is a saint." The church gave her an award. The governor shook her hand on television. Nobody knew the truth. Nobody knew that behind those white and yellow walls, something very dark was happening. Something so dark, it had been happening for 15 years. And nobody had figured it out. Here is what Mama Rosa actually was. She was not a mother. She was not a saint. She was not even a good person. Mama Rosa was a servant, a loyal, devoted servant, to something ancient and hungry that had no face, no name, and no mercy. She had made a deal when she was 26 years old, broke and desperate, sitting in a small room with a man who wore white from head to toe and whose eyes were completely black, no white, no colour, just black. Like looking into a hole that went on forever. "You want money?" the man had asked. "Yes," she had whispered. "You want power? You want people to respect you? You want to never suffer again?" "Yes, yes, yes." The man smiled. His teeth were filed into points. "Then here is what you will do." He told her to open an orphanage. He told her to collect children, the young ones, the innocent ones. He told her what to do to each child before they left. And she did it. Every child that came into the House of Hope went through what Mama Rosa called the preparation. It happened at night, in a locked room in the back of the building that was never on any floor plan. A room with no windows. A room where the walls had been painted with symbols in something that was not paint. The child would be brought in sleeping, something slipped into their evening tea and laid on a mat in the centre of the room. Mama Rosa would work through the night, chanting, burning, drawing symbols on the child's skin with a mixture of ash and oil that soaked in and disappeared before morning, leaving no visible trace. But the trace was there. Oh, it was very much there, just buried deeper than skin, deeper than bone, deeper than anything a doctor's machine could find. Each child left the orphanage carrying something inside them, something that had been placed there deliberately, something that waited. The first couple to adopt from the House of Hope was Mr. and Mrs. Adebayo. They were a happy couple. Good jobs. Nice house. They had been trying to have a baby for 7 years and couldn't. So they decided to adopt. They chose a little boy named Samuel, 3 years old. Big eyes, gap-toothed smile, the kind of child that makes strangers stop and say, "Aw." Mama Rosa handed Samuel over with her big, warm smile and a bag of his clothes and a card that said, "He is a blessing. Enjoy your joy." They drove home singing. 3 weeks later, Mr. Adebayo lost his job. He wasn't fired for doing anything wrong. His company simply collapsed overnight. No explanation. 40 employees out of work. It had never happened in the company's 30-year history. Okay, they said. "Bad luck, it will pass." 2 weeks after that, Mrs. Adebayo started having dreams. Not regular dreams. Dreams where she was standing in a dark field and a tall figure with no face was walking slowly toward her. Every night, the figure was a little closer. Every night, she woke up screaming. Every night, Samuel was standing in the doorway of their bedroom, watching her with an expression that looked nothing like a 3-year-old's face. It looked like patience. Then the money finished. Then their car broke down, and the mechanic found damage that made no mechanical sense, like something had twisted the engine from the inside. Then Mrs. Adebayo got sick. The doctors did every test. They found nothing, but she kept losing weight, kept getting weaker, kept waking up screaming from the same dream where the figure was now close enough that she could feel its breath cold, like wind from inside a cave. Their pastor came to pray. He entered the house, greeted everyone warmly, sat down, and then he stopped. He turned slowly and looked at little Samuel, who was sitting in the corner quietly playing with a toy car. The pastor stood up. He said very quietly, very carefully, trying not to alarm anyone, "I need some air." He went outside. He did not come back in. When Mr. Adebayo came outside to find him, the pastor was standing at the gate, sweating in a cold evening, and he said the most frightening thing he had ever said in 20 years of ministry. "Brother, I cannot help you in that house. What is in that house is above my level. I am sorry." He left. They never saw him again. 6 months after bringing Samuel home, Mr. and Mrs. Adebayo had lost everything. No money, no jobs. Mrs. Adebayo was bedridden. Mr. Adebayo had started drinking. The house they had worked 15 years to buy was being repossessed by the bank. And Samuel sweet, gap-toothed, big-eyed Samuel sat in the corner every day, quietly playing, watching them fall apart with those patient, ancient eyes. And they were not the only ones. Every single couple that had ever adopted from the House of Hope had the same story. Different details, same ending. One couple, the Okafor family, lost their twin boys in a car accident on the same day their adopted daughter arrived home. The driver said a dog had run into the road, but 3 witnesses said there was no dog. The car had simply swerved for no reason at full speed. One couple, the Martins, woke up one morning and their adopted son was sitting on the kitchen floor at 4 a.m., drawing on the tiles with a red crayon. When they looked at what he had drawn, Mrs. Martin fainted. Mr. Martin took a photo. He showed it to 3 different people. All 3 refused to tell him what they saw. They all said the same thing. "Burn that photo. Don't ask again." One couple, the Nwachukwus, sent their adopted daughter back to the orphanage after just 8 days. They would not say why. They sold their house 1 month later and moved to another state. They still don't talk about it. 15 years. 23 children adopted out. 23 families destroyed. And Mama Rosa kept smiling, kept collecting her awards, kept planting flowers in her garden, until the day she chose the wrong child. Her name was Blessing. She was 9 years old when she arrived at the House of Hope. Thin, serious face, quiet in a way that felt like it had depth to it, like a river that looks still on top but is moving very fast underneath. She had been brought in by a social worker after her mother died. No father, no relatives that could be found. She carried one bag and one book, a small, worn Bible that had belonged to her mother, with her mother's handwriting in the margins on nearly every page. Blessing did not cry when she arrived. She did not cling to the social worker. She walked into the House of Hope, looked around slowly at everything, and then looked at Mama Rosa with eyes that made the older woman feel, very briefly, like she was the one being assessed. Mama Rosa shook the feeling off. She smiled her big, warm smile. She showed Blessing her bed. She told her she was safe now. "Thank you, Ma," Blessing said politely. But that night, Blessing did not sleep. She sat on her bed in the dark, holding her mother's Bible, and she listened because Blessing had a gift her mother had always spoken about, quietly, carefully, with both pride and worry. Blessing could feel things that were not visible. She had always been able to. At 5 years old, she had told her mother not to travel on a particular Thursday. Her mother hadn't travelled. The bus she would have taken had gone off a bridge. At 7, she had refused to go to her friend's birthday party. She couldn't explain why. She had just felt something wrong about the house. That evening, a fire started at the party. Nobody died, but 3 children were badly burned. Her mother had held her and said, "Baby, God put something in you, a knowing. Don't ignore it, don't be afraid of it, and never ever let anyone use it for the wrong thing." Now, sitting in the dark in the House of Hope, Blessing felt something she had never felt before. The air in this building was heavy. Not with sadness, though. There was sadness here too, old and soaked into the walls, heavy with something else. Something that had been fed and grown strong over many years. Something that was everywhere in this building, in every corner, under every floorboard, behind every smile of the woman who had welcomed her so warmly. Blessing opened her mother's Bible. She began to read. The heaviness in the air moved away from her. Blessing started paying attention. She watched Mama Rosa the way a cat watches a mouse hole, completely still, completely patient, missing nothing. She noticed that every few months, one of the children would be treated differently for a week or two. Extra food, new clothes, extra kindness. And then a couple would come, always well-dressed, always nervous with the excited energy of people who desperately want a child, and they would leave with that specially treated child. And Mama Rosa would wave goodbye with her big, warm smile. She noticed that the specially treated children always looked slightly different in the days before they left. Not sick, not sad, just different. Like something behind their eyes had shifted, like a light behind a curtain that had changed colour. She noticed a door. At the back of the building, past the laundry room, there was a door that was always locked. Always. It was painted the same colour as the wall. Blessing suspected deliberately, and there was no handle on the outside. If you didn't look carefully, you might think it was just a wall. Blessing looked carefully. She also noticed that Mama Rosa disappeared into the back of the building late at night. Blessing knew because she didn't sleep well. Here the heaviness in the air made sleep difficult, and sometimes at 1 a.m. or 2 a.m. she would hear soft footsteps in the corridor, always in the direction of the laundry room, never coming back until just before dawn. She said nothing. She watched. She prayed quietly every night over every child in the room, covering them in her mother's words from the margins of the Bible prayers her mother had written down after years of her own quiet spiritual battles. And then one Tuesday, Mama Rosa started being extra kind to Blessing. Extra food, new clothes, excused from chores. Blessing went very still inside. It's my turn, she thought. She was not afraid. She opened her mother's Bible to the most marked page, the one where her mother had written so many notes. The margins had run out of space, and she read it until she had memorized every word. Then she put the Bible under her mattress. And she waited. 13 nights later, new moon, sky completely black, the kind of dark that feels deliberate. Mama Rosa came to Blessing's room at 1:30 a.m. She came with the tea, sweet smelling, warm, laced with the same herbs she had used on 31 children before this one. "Can't sleep, baby?" Mama Rosa whispered, her smile white in the darkness. "Drink this, it will help." "No thank you, Ma," Blessing said. Mama Rosa paused. "It's just tea, my love." "I know what it is, Ma," Blessing said calmly. The temperature in the room changed. "Excuse me?" Mama Rosa's voice dropped to something that was no longer warm. It was like hearing the voice that had always lived underneath the warmth, the real voice, stripped of its costume. "I know what you do to the children," Blessing said. "I know about the room. I know about the families. I know what you put inside the children before they leave." She held up her mother's Bible. "And I know how to undo it." What happened next lasted 45 minutes. The other children sleeping in the room woke to sounds they would describe differently for the rest of their lives. Some said it was like a thunderstorm inside a closed room. Some said it was like an argument in a language that hurt to hear. Some said there was light coming from under the door, but not any color of light they had seen before. One child, a 5-year-old named Peter, who slept closest to the door, said he saw, through the small gap at the bottom of the door, 2 shadows fighting. One shadow was very tall, with too many limbs, and it kept changing shape. One shadow was the size of a small girl, and it didn't move at all. "The small shadow won," Peter said when he was asked about it. "It just stood there, and the big one got smaller and smaller, and then it was gone." "How did you know the small one won?" He thought about it for a long time. "Because after the big shadow disappeared, the air changed. You know how the air smells after rain? Clean, like everything bad got washed away?" "Yes, it smelled like that. Through the whole building. I fell back asleep, and I had the best dream of my life. All the children did." At 3 a.m., Blessing walked out of the room. She found Mama Rosa sitting on the floor of the corridor, her back against the wall. The big, warm woman looked like she had aged 20 years in 45 minutes. Her clothes were rumpled. Her famous smile was completely gone. And without it, her face looked like a stranger's face, like the smile had been the only thing holding the features together. She was staring at nothing. She did not try to stop Blessing. Blessing went to the back of the building, to the painted-over door. It was still locked, but the padlock was on the outside now, which meant it had not been locked from within. Blessing picked up a heavy torch from the laundry room and hit the padlock 3 times. It fell open on the third hit. She pushed the door. The smell that came out was not something she had words for, and did not try to find words for later when people asked. She said only, "You know that smell when something has been wrong for a very long time. When something that should never have been allowed was allowed and then kept being allowed year after year, it has a smell." This was that smell. Inside the room, by the light of the torch, she found the records. Mama Rosa, like all people who serve something dark, had been meticulous. She had written everything down: dates, names of children, names of couples, amounts paid to her by the man in white, notes on how each preparation had been done. 23 families, 31 children. Blessing took everything she could carry. She walked 4 streets to the home of Mrs. Tanko, a journalist who had, 6 months ago, published a small article asking questions about the unusual rate of tragedy among families who adopted from the House of Hope. The article had been buried quickly. Mama Rosa had friends in important places, but Blessing had read it, because Blessing read everything. She knocked on the door until Mrs. Tanko opened it, bleary and alarmed. Blessing handed her the records. She said, "There are 9 children in that building. Please bring someone to get them before morning. The woman cannot stop you now. Whatever was helping her is gone." "Who are you?" Mrs. Tango asked. "My name is Blessing," she said. "My mother named me that because she said I would be one." By 6 a.m., 2 police cars were parked outside the House of Hope. By 8 a.m., the story was on every news platform. By 10 a.m., 23 families were being contacted. By noon, the white and yellow building that had smiled at the street for 15 years was surrounded by people who could not believe what they were hearing, and then looked at the evidence and had no choice but to believe. Mama Rosa was found exactly where Blessing had left her, sitting on the floor, back against the wall, staring. When the police officers lifted her to her feet, she said only one thing. She said it quietly, almost to herself. "I prepared 31 children. Not one of them ever stopped me." "What happened this time?" one officer asked, more out of surprise than professional duty. Mama Rosa looked at him. For just a second, her eyes cleared, and in that second she looked less like a criminal and more like a woman who had made a terrible choice at 26 years old and spent 15 years becoming something she could no longer recognize as herself. "This time," she said, "the child was already covered. It took time. It took prayers and patience and tears. But one by one, starting the morning, Blessing sat in that room, and the air changed. The families began to recover. Mr. and Mrs. Adebayo found jobs within a month. Mrs. Adebayo's mysterious illness cleared so completely, her doctors used the word inexplicable 3 times in their final report. The Okafor family, who had lost so much, found peace they could not explain, not the loud, celebrating kind of peace, but the quiet kind that settles in your chest when something that was chasing you finally stops running. The children who had been adopted out were not removed from their families. A team of the right people, people who understood the kind of problem this was, worked with each family, each child, undoing what had been placed inside them. It was work. It was not instant. but it was done. As for the children still in the House of Hope, they were placed with new families, carefully, properly. Blessing herself was adopted 8 months later by Mrs. Tanko, the journalist, who had fallen in love with this small, serious, extraordinary 9-year-old and could not imagine sending her anywhere else. On the day the adoption was finalized, Mrs. Tanko asked her, "Are you happy?" Blessing thought about it, genuinely thought about it, the way she thought about everything. Then she said, "Yes, the air here is clean." Mrs. Tanko didn't ask what she meant. She had learned by then that when Blessing said something like that, it was simply true. The House of Hope was demolished 14 months after the arrest. On the day they knocked it down, one of the construction workers reported something strange. As the walls came down, as 15 years of secrets finally opened to the sky, a wind came out of the rubble. Just one gust. Warm. The kind of warm that feels like someone squeezing your hand. And then it was gone, the worker told his wife that evening. She didn't fully believe him, but he said, "I swear, it felt like something saying thank you and then leaving. Like something that had been stuck for a very long time finally got to go home." His wife was quiet for a moment. Then she said, "Maybe it did. Some evil hides itself in flowers and warm smiles. But evil that hides is still evil. And the truth, no matter how long it takes, always finds a way to walk out the front door." Thank you for watching till this very end. Please subscribe to our channel, like, comment, and share this wonderful piece to your friends and loved ones. See you on our next story. Bye.